In this video, I want to show you another way that you can use a flesh tint ink to give body to a design. Now, normally when I draw plants or any inanimate objects, I put an underlayer of yellow or some color that's going to give a little bit of depth to the stippling. And I haven't done that with this American flag, which is done in just red and blue. And right now the stars are done with gouache, which is a paint, but the stripes themselves are in red. And because of the size pen I'm using, the red comes out a little bit light, and yet if I add an undercolor of yellow, it would come out too much like orange. So I have a way to fix this to give it a little bit more depth, have it look a little bit more finished. And I'm using currently in a 3/0 pen FW acrylic flesh tint ink. And what I'm doing is going over this red with a flesh tint, and I'm not doing it completely so that it actually covers the entire red area, but I'm just doing it randomly. And a 3/0 is a fairly large size pen for me. I usually use 6/0, but I can't use a smaller pen really with the flesh tint. I don't ever put it in anything smaller than a 4. But when I'm using other colors, I usually use smaller pens. So this is going to give me a nice body to each of the stripes that is going to give it a different background or a different layer than the white that it's next to. And in that sense, it's just going to not only look different, but look like it has more depth. So after adding this layer, I will then go over the stripe again with red. And I'm pretty sure I have the red pen here. The pen filled with red. Now this is another way that you can do this. Instead of doing a flesh tint layer and another red layer, you can use a darker ink. The red that I have on there now is FW acrylic flame red, but I also mix my own inks, and I call this one cranberry. So I have mixed a darker ink, but going over the lighter red with the darker ink may not give me the depth that I'm looking for. And this is a little bit of a hint with when you're stippling in layers. And for some reason I don't have the pen with red right here. But when you're stippling with layers, you are building up depth, even if you only do a random stippling through there. So let me fill a pen with red, and I'll be back to show you how that stripe looks. Okay, and I'm just going to take flame red that is diluted. Now I want to show you something before I start this. Here's the flame red and here's the cranberry. And I think you can tell that the flame red really is more of an orangey red. So if I had done a yellow layer under here, I would have ended up with a very orange looking flag, which was not what I wanted. It's a wonderful way to make a light orange if you want, but I was looking for some depth in the flag, in the stripes, without using a yellow to make it orange. Now, flesh tint is a brownish color. But it's really just adding depth here and not really a brown. plus the flesh tint was very diluted. So if anything, what it does is add a barrier between the white of the paper and the ink. And the more layers of red I go over it with now, the deeper the red will become. And that would be for two reasons. The paper, this is about the fourth layer of ink on this now, and the underneath layers of ink have dried. They also form a physical barrier between the ink and the paper, but the flesh tint adds a color barrier between the white of the paper and the ink. It's a way to make the red more opaque. Excuse me. Now I think you'll be able to see that bottom stripe, let me move the camera, the bottom stripe is just slightly darker than the stripe above it. And again, the more I add red layers now, the deeper the red will get. And on the blue area, I had added a few layers of light blue, as well as layers of like a navy blue. So it doesn't, adding the flesh tone did not make it look brown. It just gave it a little bit more depth. Now, of course, like I said, the other option is to use a deeper color red, such as the cranberry. And that would be faster, and it would be a little bit more intense maybe. And it depends on the look that you're after. I always like subtle layers that are built up, because then you can control, let's say that I had this flag waving, and I would need shadows or curves to make sure that the whole effect was correct. In that case, I would prefer to use layers that are built up, because it's more of a natural look. And if I use just brighter or more transparent colors, it would have more of a graphic look to it and be brighter, a little bit more stylized. So it's up to you on what look you're after. But you can use a flesh tone as an underneath layer instead of yellow when you don't want an orange tinge. my battery popped out of the camera. But up here in these 2 layers of red had more or less filled them in evenly. So then the bottom stripe has 1 layer of flesh tint over that, and then a total of 3 layers of red, flame red. And you can now see how much darker that makes the stripe of the flag. Now this particular one, the thickness of my stripes is a little bit off, and I had done the stars in gouache, so it's more of a sketchy type American flag instead of a perfect one. But the depth is now present in the color of the stripe, and that is the color that I was after, instead of just using, say, 3 layers of cranberry.